Welcome. In this video I'm going to be talking about cross multiplication, which is the primary technique used by Western and Indian mental calculation competitors. Cross multiplication is very powerful in the situation where you can type or write the answer as you're going. It allows you to solve questions one digit at a time and continue moving while forgetting the digits you've already answered. I'm going to start off with a demonstration of some smaller cross multiplication questions: 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, and 5 by 5. Okay, so those recordings were taken during a single session in April 2025, just to illustrate the general times that can be reached using cross multiplication. One thing you will notice with cross multiplication is it's rather easy to estimate the time using the number of digits you are multiplying. So on a 4 by 4, it's going to be 16 1 by 1 multiplications, and your time for solving a 4 by 4 should be roughly equal to 16 divided by 9 times your time for a 3 by 3, or 16 divided by 4 times your time for a 2 by 2. There is a little bit of an adjustment. It gets slightly easier once you move past into larger numbers. There's a little bit of a reaction time adjustment, maybe 0.2 seconds. So if you subtract 0.2 from your times, then they should follow that logic roughly. And if it's not following that logic roughly, then you're likely not quite comfortable with the size of the question. Maybe you're not comfortable with where the columns are. Maybe your eyes aren't comfortable reading the question. But when you do practice a lot, that general logic holds true all the way up to 8 by 8 for me, and for Aryan Shukla even past 8 by 8. So what is cross multiplication? Fundamentally, while school method involves deconstructing one of the numbers, cross multiplication involves the deconstruction of both numbers. So when we're multiplying 123 times 456, we are breaking it apart into a series of 1 by 1 multiplications. I have written it out here in the most expansive way I could. So here and it's also working from left to right here. So we're going to take the first digit in each number, 1 and 4, and we got multiply 100 times 400, plus the first digit in the first number times the second digit in the second number, plus the second digit in the first number times the first digit in the second number, and so on and so on. We've created 9 1 by 1 multiplication questions rather than having to multiply a single digit by multiple digits. You obviously have to do the corresponding addition, but this isn't really what it looks like when you're actually doing it. When you're actually doing the cross multiplication question, you can solve one digit at a time write down the answer, and keep moving. So here's a 4x4 question. We start at the right, and we get 8 times 4 equals 32. So we're going to write the 2. We're going to keep 3. We're going to do 3 plus 8 times 5 and get 43, plus 5 times 4 and get 63. So we're going to write the 3. We're going to carry the 6. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 6 is 54, plus 5 times 5, so we're at 79, plus 8 times 4, so we're at 111. Write 1, carry the 11. Rather than going through this whole question, here's one where I wrote out each of the individual steps. So again, we are going to start from the right here. 4 times 1 equals 4. And then we're going to simply choose to move to the left on one of the numbers. It doesn't really matter. I always prefer to move to the left on the top number. So we're going to do 1 times 9 plus 4 times 4. And we're going to make the cross. 9 plus 16 equals 25. We can write down this 5. You can see the answer at the bottom of the page. And we're going to carry the 2. So we have 2 plus 1 times 6, 4 times 9, and 7 times 4. So 2 plus 6 plus 36 plus 28 equals 72. We write down the 2, we carry the 7, and we continue moving. So 1 times 4 plus 6 times 4 plus 9 times 7 plus 4 times 9. We get 134. Now when we've done the full cross, the full 4x4, now we're going to have to move to the left on the second number. So we're going to move from the 1 to the 4. We'll do 4 times 4 plus 6 times 7 plus 8 times 1. And we're going to get 16 plus 42 plus 81. We're carrying the 13 from last time. And that results in 152. We'd write down the 2, carry the 15. And then we're going to move to the left again. 7 times 4 is 28. 9 times 6 is 54. So 15, 28, and 54 is 97. And then last, we move to the left and get 9 times 4 is 36. We add it to the 9 that we carried, and we come up with the last 2 digits of the answer, 45. Okay, and as far as some tips for practicing cross multiplication, there's not really a secret approach. I think everybody who uses cross multiplication approaches it generally the same. We're going to talk about variance in a second, but the people who compete at the Mental Calculation World Cup, for example, using almost the exact same approach. But one thing that is critical and that may be overlooked is that if you want to improve on cross multiplication, the most effective and efficient way to do so is improve on addition and subtraction. Most of your time doing a cross multiplication question, you are doing addition and subtraction. If you are not as good at that as you could be, it will be holding you back in cross multiplication. So especially if you're not a Soroban competitor, I would recommend watching my tutorial on addition and subtraction. It might be more helpful than watching this tutorial in terms of improving your overall cross multiplication speed. The second thing, just like when you're doing addition and subtraction, it's about building muscle memory. You want to do the same process over and over and over again. You want your mind to feel like it's automatic. You should be starting, if you're going to go, you move to the left on the top number, then can do that every single time. Don't switch it up between the top and the bottom. Do the crosses in the same order every single time. And don't skip numbers. Don't look around the question. Just do the same process over and over. Build that muscle memory. The third thing is when you're starting it and you're getting adjusted to it, doing the crosses is going to feel unnatural. Your eyes will adjust, your mind will adjust, but really, ideally, you should not be moving your eyes. You should not be scanning the problem. You should be able to hold the whole problem in your vision, and you should see the two numbers as two numbers. You shouldn't see them as 5 individual digits and you have to move around and do crosses. You should see 2 5-digit numbers and see the left part and the right part and just have your eyes and your mind move. One way to evaluate how you're doing is, as I mentioned before, your times should be, with a little bit of a reaction time adjustment, they should be proportional to the square of the number of digits you're doing if both numbers are the same number of digits. So, for instance, a 4x4, that's 16 1x1 multiplications. That should take you roughly 4 times as long as a 2x2. Again, there's a little bit of a reaction time adjustment, so it actually will be slightly faster than 4 times as long. If you're seeing in your chart, you're looking at your scores, and at some point the numbers are getting too high, they don't follow that model anymore, it probably means you haven't developed muscle memory to be comfortable with that number of digits. You're likely scanning the columns or struggling to remember what column you're working on. So if you're looking for short-term results, my suggestion would be to chart your scores on the different 2x2, 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, and figure out where they're falling off. And that's the point where your brain is no longer completely comfortable reading the question and processing the question. And if you want to see short-term progress, you should probably work on that part where your brain is falling off. That being said, I do believe that practicing a larger question, say 8x8, is productive and valuable regardless of where you are. I think you can become much faster at 3x3, 4x4, for example, doing an 8x8. And doing a 3x3 or a 4x4 does not necessarily translate to doing an 8x8. It's not going to necessarily make your mind comfortable seeing and processing the 8x8 question. So my personal suggestion to you is, if you're committed and you're doing this for your significant time of practice, do the larger questions, do the more complicated ones. You'll see the results on the smaller questions. But if you want to see short-term results and you want your scores to get better quickly, then I would figure out where your scores are falling off and build up one step at a time. So while cross multiplication in the Western mental calculation community is typically done right to left and one digit at a time, there are variants that can be used. You can do it left to right. Now, the difficulty in doing it left to right is that you will have to carry backwards. Sometimes, if you've written down the digit, you would have to cross it out and write a new digit. And it is possible, although it won't happen that often, that multiple digits later, you could result in a backward carry that affects a couple digits earlier, which you would have to have the ability to then change the answer you've written, or the mental composure to update your answer if you're keeping it visualized in your head. So typically, if you're typing the answer and you're typing certainly on a program that allows right to left typing, you're probably going to solve the question from right to left. Now, if you need to write the answer, it is very likely that it's going to be to your benefit to solve it left to right, because simply we can write much faster from left to right than right to left. We see that at the Mental Calculation World Cup, where Japanese competitors who are solving left to right are able to write much quicker, although Aryan can write rather quickly from right to left. If you're doing, you have to give the answer orally. Doing it right to left is going to be a problem if it's a larger number. If it's an 8x8 multiplication and you're trying to remember that the 9-digit answer, or sorry, the 15-digit answer, that is going to be quite a challenge. If you are doing multi-factor multiplication, A times B times C, it's going to be easier to work from left to right for the same reason that it's easier to do an oral question from left to right. Your mind is better at preserving the number, committing it to memory when you're building it from left to right. If I give you digits to memorize and I ask you to repeat them back in the order you were given them, it will be easier to do that than if I ask you to repeat them backwards. Studies consistently show that to be true. And when you are doing A times B times C, and you need to remember the answer for A times B and then multiply it by C, it's going to be much more difficult to do it from right to left. You can do cross multiplication using multiple digits, whether you're working from left to right or right to left. You could do it, 2x2, 3x3 even. It is not clear yet that anybody has truly become comfortable or mastered that yet. In Calculation League matches, you can see that Wenzel Gruis certainly has used multi-digit cross multiplication. I believe that there are matches where Collian uses multi-digit cross multiplication. But as I will talk about more in the comparison video, mastering multi-digit cross multiplication would be a highly effective and valuable approach to doing A times B. It does appear that it would provide a significant advantage over doing single digit, but there are obstacles to mastering it that I will talk about more later. So here's an example of doing cross multiplication from left to right. You start with the 7 and the 1. 7 times 1 is 7. Now we're going to do 7 times 5 plus 1 times 5. So we have 35 plus 5 equals 40. So now, just as with the school method, we're going to imagine there's a 0 behind the 7. And so we're going to take 70 and we're going to add it to 40 and come up with 110. Now, at this point, once we've done two calculations, we're going to write down the 1. That's the first digit of our answer. We are going to keep the 10, and we're going to continue to pretend there's a 0 behind it, just like when we were doing left to right school method. So now we are going to move 7 times 4 is 28, plus 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 times 1 is 1. So we have 54. We're going to add that to the 100 here and come up with 154. We're going to write down 1 again. We're going to keep the 54, pretend there's a 0, so we have 540. 540 plus 7 times 8 is 596, plus 5 times 4 is 616, plus 5, 621, plus 5, 626. We'll write down the 6, keep the 26, pretend it's 260. 260 plus 5 times 8 is 300, plus 4 is 304, plus 5 times 5 is 329. Write the 3, carry the 29. 290 plus 1 times 8 is 298, plus 5 times 4 is 318. Write the 3, carry the 18, it's 180, plus 5 times 8 is 220, and so those are the last three digits of the answer. Our answer is 11633220. And here is an example of doing two-digit cross multiplication from left to right. So we are going to start with that 66 times 82. We're going to come up with 5,412. Because as before, the 12 includes digits that are much less than 5. We can be pretty confident in writing down two digits here. So we're going to write down 5 and 4 as the first two digits of our answer immediately. We'll see later on that sometimes we can only write down one digit. So now we're going to move over to the right on the bottom. So we have 66 times 75 plus 08 times 82. This is 5,606. So because we're doing two digits at a time, we have to pretend that there are two zeros behind the 12. So it's 1,200 plus 5606 equals 6806. So we're going to write down 68 here. We're going to keep the 6, which is 600. And then we're going to do 66 times 19, 08 times 75, 26 times 82, which equals 3,986. We add that to 600, and we come up with 4586. Now here, we're going to write down one digit because this is an 8. And because it's an 8, there's a high chance of a backward carry. So we write down the 4. We're going to keep the 586, and we'll move forward. Now 66 times 97, 08 times 19, 26 times 75, 86 times 82. Now in this example, I have pretended I haven't written down any digit. So the answer to this 66 times 97 plus 8 times 19 plus 26 times 75 plus 86 times 82 is 15,556. So if we're taking the whole 4586, or we can just take 58,600, we add it together and we get 74,156. Now, if we've written the 4 down already, we're going to write down 74. Otherwise, if we preserve the whole number, we can write down 474. But you can see with the 5 If we had written down the 5, we would now have to go back and change it to a 7. This is partly because we are in the middle of the cross and we have 4 different 2 by 2 or 2 by 1 multiplications to add. And also because this number is an 8, there's a high chance it's going to result in turning the 5 to at least a 6. So we continue on with the steps just as with normal cross multiplication. We're going to move over to the right. So we're going to do 0, 8 times 97, 26 times 19, 86 times 75, 7,720. We have 15,600 plus 7,720. And that results in 23320. Now, again, because we're getting to the end of the cross and this next number is a 2, I can be comfortable in writing down the 233. We're going to keep the 20, which is really a 2,000. We're going to add 2,000 plus 26 times 97 plus 86 times 19, and which is 6,156. And then I'm going to write down the 61, and then I will do the last cross and finish the question.